6:30, I'll call it as a quarter. Here we go. Start with pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jerry, you got the attendance?
Yes, Megan is absent, everyone else is here.
Okay, we actually have two sets of minutes.
We do?
Didn't we have this one?
That was
and
the
then
last meeting,
The
wasn't it?
special meeting?
Oh, I didn't print them out, did
We
I?
didn't bring- Okay,
And I sent them to you, didn't I?
yeah, okay, we'll do one set tonight and we'll do
Okay.
the next set,
I think everybody got, oh no, they didn't. Did I send you both sets? Oh. I guess I sent them, but I didn't print out the second one, but I sent them out to everyone.
okay, has everybody had a chance to review both the minutes from October 15th as well as the minutes from October 29th? Have you had a chance to go through them?
That was a good point.
That's right, you were.
All right, good enough. Well, then I'll take a motion for the approval of the minutes of October 15th. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion, changes, anybody would like to make? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to the special meeting minutes of October 29th. They're not in the packet, but they were distributed, so I'll take a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Any changes, discussions people have? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. And any opposed? All right, we will move on. Pete, we're up to you. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and I wanted to let you know that I did distribute our email dialogue, so people are up to date based on that.
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting us come in tonight. As my letter did state, that I sent you over the weekend, that our boat was manufactured in 2008 and took delivery of it in the spring of 2009. It came from Petaluma, California. From Moose Boats as a manufacturer. We've had nothing but a great response with the boat. We've had no issues with the boat except for just minor marine incident upkeep throughout the years. Mostly is like the under coating and paint on the boat. But our motors aren't failing due to lack of use. They're still running. There are mechanical issues going on with them. We've been able to keep them in service, up to date. But the motors are from 2000. We got them with the boat in 2008, so they're a little older than that. I mean, technology of it. So they discontinued and stopped manufacturing the type motors that we have. They're Mercury Verados. It's old technology, so they're not manufacturing new parts to them. So if we did have a catastrophic failure on the motor, we'd have to buy new motors, but we'd be out of service probably for the whole summer. If it happened in the springtime, we'd be out of service for the whole summer because any boat company won't put a new motor on a boat in the spring or summer because of everything else going on at the marinas. So we were told it's more of a fall, winter project for any new motors. That brings us tonight is, the reason why we're coming tonight is we did have an incident on July 4th that we went out for an emergency and we had to come back on one motor. We lost one of the motors. We were able to, it was after hours, we were able to have somebody come down and look at the motor and diagnose it that we lost a couple rings on our hoses and was flooding the motor with seawater. So we were able to fix it and get it up and running over the weekend. But stated to us then it's just like really just starting the cycle of replacing parts. We do have a leak in our lower unit of our port motor. So every couple of months they have to take the lower unit off, flush out all the gear oil and put it back on. So it's being winterized. Our generator and everything are being winterized this week. just for the colder weather. If we do have to use it, we just open a valve and flood the motor again with the seawater, and we just have to winterize it again. You've never had to use it in the winter, so that's a good thing. But with the Amtrak bridge replacement coming on, and they've already had one incident with one person in the water, we're really toying with keeping our boat in the water year round along with Old Line, just because we all know how fast the current goes through the Connecticut River at the point, and how fast you can go out to the Long Island Sound. So we've been toying around for a couple of years about motors and what to do, and we've reached out to a couple different companies, and we got quotes for Mercury's, Yamaha's, and Suzuki, but we've ruled out going to Suzuki. It's not really made for what we have to do. Our line of marine rescue isn't a pleasure craft, like, oh, you're gonna just nice and easy throttle up. It's more like 0 to 100 to get going, and then you throttle back and settle down from there. And there's a lot of like on and off the throttle. So we've narrowed it down to Mercury's and Yamaha's, and anywhere between 300 horsepower per motor or 350 horsepower per motor. We're being told that we can go to 350s, but it's more of like the weight. They said that the technology from what we have now to what's out there now, it's not big of a difference. They're saying that it might be only like 15 or 20 pounds per motor due to the materials they're using now. So we're just trying to clarify that with the boat manufacturer to make sure we can actually handle 350s. So the numbers I gave you in the email, my recommendation to the Board of Finance would be to go to the Yamaha 350s if we could do it. And it just increases the price of the motors $8,500 overall. And the quote that I got for that was with labor installed. And unfortunately, one of the quotes we got for the Mercury 300s was over $100,000, and it did not include labor. And I was told labor is probably another $25,000 to $30,000.
Okay, before we take questions, Dan, we would be funding this out of an off-budget account, right?
Fire department
Give us the-
apparatus,
Give us
yes.
the status of that.
So right now, in the report, you'll see it has a negative balance, but that is because we are waiting for our reimbursement for the radios that we got for a grant. And we're gonna get $500,000 back. So net, when that's all taken into consideration, we have about $200,000 in the fire department apparatus account as it sits today.
Do we have a sense of timing as to when that 500 is gonna come back in?
I think pretty soon, because I saw the paperwork go out
It's been
and
submitted,
it's been submitted, yeah, so I think pretty
been
soon.
submitted about 2-3 weeks ago, I'd say, and then they haven't gotten back to us yet as to, you know, you failed to include a certain document, so we anticipated soon.
Okay. And if you got the approval tonight, what would be your process, chief, for getting?
So, excuse me, so there's a lot going on with our fireboat between now and the first couple of weeks of January. So we're gonna end up moving our boat down the river a little bit. We're going to the south yard where the bridge construction is. They're building us a dock. Now we're putting bubblers in so that nothing will freeze around the boat. Right after the new year, we're taking our boat to Riverside Basin in Clinton. We're pulling the boat out. We're gonna have it, the whole bottom half sandblasted. And we're having a density test done on the metal to make sure that there's no weak spots in the metal. And we're doing it all through our budget. We're not asking for any money for that. So that right after that's done in January, we're putting it back in the water and then bringing it back to Saybrook. And then we would order the motors after we get approval from the town to have them ready to go. We would try to do it right after that to get the motors right on before the springtime and over the winter.
Okay.
Because we're Old Lime's getting their motors on their boat within the next week or two, and theirs won't be done until January 1st. So that's why we kind of pushed all of our stuff after January, so we have a rescue boat in the river.
Okay, questions by the board?
You have 2 motors now that don't work?
So one has the lower end unit, they both run, but the one has that lower end unit on it. But you can't just replace one, you'd have to replace both, just
How many hours are
700, between 750 and 900. We're not replacing it because of the hours, we're replacing it because of the age.
in the parts? difficult?
Yeah,
In the motors themselves, the Yamaha's 350s are how much?
it would be. I would say right around $95,000.
Now, is that a quote or a bid?
That's a quote. I got 3 or 4 different quotes for it.
Quotes. And then is that installed?
Installed, that one is, yeah,
95,000 installed
correct,
for both of them?
yes.
That's about what we paid with the police, I believe, around 90.
Geez, sounds like that.
That was around 90.
That was like all in with the police practically, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
Our fire boat was $585,000,
but,
which half of it was paid for, our other boat being sunk.
right.
Other questions?
I'm just curious, I think it was Mercury that had 131,000, plus they wanted labor.
Correct.
So what would be the labor over and above the 131 that Yamaha is supplying at 95?
I'd rather not talk about it on being recorded,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Yamaha's a better engine.
huh?
The Yamaha's a much better engine.
It's a great one. Well, I'm not technical. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
A rough idea, they'd have to take the old motors off. You're rewiring everything, hydraulics and electric. Quick inspection of the transfer, just 'cause it's pushing 20 years old, because to sustain the weight and compatibility with the new motors. And then physically getting the new motors on, the new hydraulics, the new electronics, and all that to go with it. It's a bit lengthy, and that's without finding any issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Carl?
So with regard to the 300s versus the 350s, you're asking the boat manufacturer in terms of how well that engine will work on your boat. I guess, are you asking anybody else locally in the industry, just because if they don't work, it's a problem?
Yeah. So I've talked to Moose Boats, and they said that
To who?
Moose Boats is the
Yeah.
manufacturer.
Yeah.
With the specs. They said we could do 350s, Mercury and Yamaha. I talked to a local company here that said you could do 300s or 350s. It's up to us. And I talked to a local outboard dealer here in town, Greg's Outboard, and I was talking to them, and they said your boat will handle 350s all day long. He said the difference between the 300s and 350s is your fuel consumption with the 350s. He goes, if you go full throttle, you use up more fuel. He goes, but you get back off because you don't need all the power, so it's a wash. They said your fuel may go up 10% overall if you go full throttle. They said that you have more power with 350s to cause you to use less power at the end when you're up and running.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're asking around to make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the boat would be comfortable with the extra weight and even the extra power, and that it would handle appropriately
Correct.
with that kind of power.
Yep.
All right,
Carl, it's mostly about weight.
well, yeah,
It's mostly about weight on the vessel, and that's
Yeah.
why going to the manufacturer is probably better, right? Which is what they've done already, because when you manufacture a boat, they don't manufacture a boat thinking it's gonna be this brand of outboard or that brand of outboard. It's typically, I mean, a lot of them have, have agreements with certain outboard manufacturers, but it's more about the weight and can the boat hold the capacity. Can I ask a question? I know we probably don't want to talk about names, but for years you guys have had and received like phenomenal service. Correct me if I'm wrong, where the boat has been docked,
Correct.
but now that same place has changed hands.
Very much so.
And so my hope is that Yamaha is elsewhere.
It is.
Okay.
Okay.
And I was
Try to read through that one.
Off reporting about it. It's just.
George, do you have a question?
I do, I think this idea of basically funding it, so that when these things come up, I think is a really good idea, and I'm just trying to do some math in my head, right? So the engine is 15 years old,
Say that
The
again?
engine is 15 years old, the two engines,
Correct.
and you guys have been babying it for quite a while, so, it needs to be replaced because of age, so we could just say it needs to be replaced, say, after 10 years, 12 years, or something like that, right? So-
Yeah, so it's been in our capital outlay for, to repower it every 10 years, but we just pushed it down the road because we haven't had to. So in my philosophy was why replace something if it doesn't need to be replaced? I would hate, especially with the past couple of years we have in the marine industry calls, like last year we had 30-something or 40 marine incidents that we responded to. And we're not just responding locally, we're going to Westbrook, Clinton, to Millstone, out to Mystic, and we're responding by ourselves. The police department may or may not come out with us. Most of the time they do, but sometimes they don't have an operator, and we're out by ourselves. And I would hate to be stranded out there by myself out on the side of Mystic. And we're not going out in the greatest of weather. We're going out when the weather's bad. You have 5 or 6 footers out there. It's windy in the middle of the rain, and it's just,
Right, no, so I'm just trying to quickly, just thinking, right, so I mean, whatever the reason is, right, so right now the two Yamaha motors, labor included is around $90,000, $95,000.
so if we go to the twin 350s for Yamaha, it'd be about $95,000.
Right, and then the Mercury, for whatever reason, it's 130 plus labor, which would be around 150,000, so that's the range we're talking about. And so you just said that these engines last about 10 years, and so theoretically, we should be putting in around $10,000 to $15,000 a year, not including inflation, right? We want to basically replace this every 10 years. And I'm just wondering whether that's something that, are we actually doing that, or how do you think about it?
Well, we are putting money aside.
Yeah, the town is funding everything. Before you came on the board, we did buy 2 fire trucks out of it, and we took a loan for it. So we pay $100,000 a year out of our apparatus sinking fund towards
Oh, I
that
see.
loan.
Oh, I see, so this is just a general fund for everything.
Yeah.
I see, fair enough, thank you.
Which are,
Those for the fire department apparatus. The fund is
Understood.
specifically just for their equipment.
I see, so you don't separate out like a fire truck versus
Correct, whatever they,
versus an engine. The boat is $500,000, what did you say?
we bought it for 500 and change, I think,
So how long does the boat last?
30 plus years. If you
Depends.
take care of it, yeah.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. It's been, we have a lot of very capable people that are
Yeah.
good
But
at it.
again, so that's a long time, I mean, anticipating 30 years on $500,000, right, so. Okay, thank you.
Brad, do you have another question?
No, I'd just like to make a motion to move it along.
All right. So what I hear Brad making a motion is to go forward with the Yamaha engines
Yep, for 95,000?
for 95,000.
Does the motion have to be that specific that it has to be Yamaha, or can we just allocate the funds?
Right.
Right,
To just say
Just to say,
$95,000.
right, instead of, I
Yeah,
think, just in case, I mean,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that, it sounds like that's not gonna happen, but.
George, question?
Yeah, no, I mean, are we gonna do this even though right now the fund has no money, or are we just gonna basically just?
Well, yeah, we're doing a deficit financing on this with the clear expectation of the reimbursement on the radio grant. So, and I think from a timing standpoint, we've got to get the fire department in line so that they're ready for the late winter, early spring, to be able to get the engines in.
We do this with other funds.
Understood.
Yeah.
But we just.
And we have, so we have 180,000 or so every year going into the apparatus account. So the fire trucks will get paid off, and things get paid off, and as long as there's a funding stream, a set funding stream, I think we've been pretty cautious, but also pretty responsible in terms of the way we're funding these items.
Okay, so Brad's made a motion for $95,000 out of the fire apparatus fund to be used for new motors. Is there a second?
Second.
A second, any other discussion? Paul?
I just wanna, we're putting on a specific number, 95,000. Is that a very firm number? Is there a possibility?
It could, well,
Yeah, you might need some contingency money.
you might get a little more based on what they find on the transfer when they take the motors off. That's the unknown. Nobody will quote anything on that. So like the motors are 95,000. If there's something wrong with the transom and they need to weld something on it, it could be, I just throw $5,000 at it, saying to reinforce it or whatnot. I think Eric would know more about stuff like that, because he's been in the industry, he's worked on some of this stuff, he's seen it go through. Like, there's a couple unknowns about when you take the motors off, if anything's on there.
Yeah, he's right. I don't have anything else to add. I mean, once they take the motors off, I mean, that's where all the stress on the boat is, right? All that weight's been sitting there for 16 years. So I mean, there's always the potential, whether it's aluminum, fiberglass, there's gonna be stress cracks, but we won't know until they get to that point.
Do we have a recommendation for a number?
Is that done by a survey?
Say that again?
Is that done by a survey?
The boat the motor manufacturer will take it off and he'll look at it. We do have, that density test guy coming in, and, after our boat is sandblasted, he's gonna density test everything. You'll be able to see more once they have it sandblasted. But we won't know that until January.
Yeah, so if there's an issue with the hull or the transom, they'll have to come back anyway.
I,
I mean,
If it's simple or not catastrophic, I would take it out of my budget. I wouldn't come back and ask for it.
so, John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with, just making a broad $95,000 stipulation. I would much rather prefer to name the boat the money's being applied to.
well, that was the.
No, I didn't mean not the fireboat. I meant just naming the engine brand.
Brand,
No, well, that's what I meant, the Yamaha engine, yeah.
well, I'm voting for Yamaha.
So basically you're saying you solicited 3 bids, Mercury, Yamaha, and, Suzuki. So since, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's a difference without a distinct, I mean, we're doing the same thing.
The money's there.
Doesn't the police boat have Yamaha?
I believe so, sir.
Yeah,
It's better, yeah.
I think so too.
So the motion is to accept the Yamaha bid.
Solicitation.
Solicitation. Does that make sense? Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. We will continue to move forward. Treasury report, Madam Treasurer.
Okay.
And for those of you who were concerned that I jumped right over the public comment, there was no public. So, I did notice that.
Ooh, they were in a flurry. Good job there, Bruce. All right. So our treasurer's report as of October 31, 2024. So fiscal year to date, the town has received revenue of $30,057,217, or 58.4% of the total amount of $51,440,042 budgeted for fiscal year 25. When comparing our performance to last fiscal year, we are 0.1% behind from this time last year, just like last month. Next, we'll move to our authorized investment section. So as at the end of October, the town had 39.6 million in its bank accounts. In the last month, the stiff rate is still declining slightly to 5.12%, and today it is at 4.76%. And Webster gives us our stiff rate in arrears, and their rate last month was 5.39%. So the investment committee decided to move $5 million out of the stiff account in October and put it into the Webster account, being that we will likely spend around $7 million in expenditures in November and December, and we received a higher return on the Webster account in arrears, so we make a little more money this way. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay, any questions there? Thank you. Then we'll move down to the pension plan. So at the end of October, we received our report from Morgan Stanley. And the town pension plan is up 3.81% fiscal year to date versus its benchmark of 4.08%. Over the 3-year horizon, the town plan has returned 2.16% versus its benchmark of 3.61%. The fire department pension plan is up 3.83% fiscal year to date and has returned 2.62% over the 3-year horizon versus its benchmark of 3.61%. That's all I have on pension.
Can I say, at the last month, we were, had a discussion about the funded ratio and I think what I heard was Morgan Stanley was gonna be coming back with their, report, and when that report comes in, the funded ratio may change. Did that happen since the last meeting, or is this, because it seems like it's been pretty steady, that's all.
Milliman is going to determine our funded ratio. They're our actuary.
Okay,
They do it once per year, and usually in February or March,
okay,
we'll get it
all right,
then.
sorry, my timing
It'll be a bit, yeah.
It's a ways away.
Okay.
We'll keep you abreast. Okay, so total cash balances were 39.6 million, total pension balances were 30.7 million, for total assets under management of 70.3 million. Page 2 of the treasurer's report show the revenues broken out in more detail. Tax revenues were 188,213 for the month, bringing fiscal year-to-date total to 28,378,161, or 57.5% of the amount budgeted for fiscal year 25. Next, we'll move down to the state portion. We received a portion of our ECS state revenue grant of $32,829, just about, looks like a quarter of it. And we received a notice from the state regarding the Municipal Revenue Sharing Fund, which last year, fiscal 24, you'll see we received $200,357. And this year, we budgeted $62,000 for fiscal year 25. The notice stated that there are no remaining funds for fiscal year 24, and that actual sales and tax collections were weak, and there will be no available funds for a grant payment. So, we will be under budget for the amount of $62,000 this year. Any questions there?
it looks like we've got $20 for the town clerk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually that goes in miscellaneous income, but.
yeah, yeah.
But, you know, sometimes strangely out of the blue, you get
Something.
a different state grant. It's odd. So I wouldn't foreclose, any thought of possibly getting a grant under that line item, but we'll see.
Yeah, you never know, right? So in terms of local revenues, the town collected $261,604 locally, for a total of $482,666 in local revenues, for a total of $30,057,270, or 58.4% of our fiscal 25 budget. Interest income was $109,878 for the month, and building permit was for $86,124 for the month, having the building department in 4 months of fiscal 25 hit 111% of their budgeted amount. Unbelievable. That's all I have. Any questions?
Is there something in the building permits, I don't know if you know this, that's causing that to
I don't know,
be
did they
so much
have,
higher?
yeah, I don't know.
Is there a big project in town that's causing the building permits to be revenue so much higher?
So, you know, I had Tom in my office today, and we were talking about it. So, Yale's doing a pretty big project.
Oh, that's right.
You have Amtrak putting a lot of money into the property over at Custom Marine. And Mike Picard's project on Lynn Street is generating income. Pretty soon, we got notice that there's gonna be clearing over on Spencer Plain Road. I don't know how many of you knew about several proposed developments over the years. Basically, when you come off the Highway 95 going north at exit 66, you come off, if you were to go straight, It's just a wooded area. There's been a big for sale sign there. An orthopedic office is gonna go in there. It's about 25,000 square feet. So I don't know if those building permits are gonna come in this year, but there are some, I asked him the same question today. I said, what are the projects going on? Where? And he said, those are three that I can think of. He goes, and it's just, he said, even though interest rates are up, the homeowners are just, it's like gangbusters out there.
Stock market,
What?
stock market.
Yeah, I mean, wealth effect, right? I mean, there could be a little bit of that too, yeah. But those are three larger projects that I can name.
That Yale project, where is that, if you can mention it?
It's right at the Yale Medical, right off
Behind, you
exit
know
two.
where the blood
It's
draw
behind it.
No, I
station?
know the buildings.
It's behind it,
They're building a building behind the building?
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't know.
on the other side of the small parking lot.
they're putting in like MRI, CAT scan. I think they're putting in the whole new building there.
Wow.
It's gonna be great. It's great for Old Saybrook, I think.
Other questions for the treasurer?
Just a quick one. So can you get minus number for Harvey's Beach?
I don't know. Leanne, how did we get a minus number for Harvey's Beach?
How do we, I'm sorry, get what?
A minus number, it's a minus number,
It's
the
trivial.
5212 or?
That's trivial, man.
I'm not sure, I'll have to look that up, but sometimes it has to do
That's
with
fine.
rebates or whatever the thing may be, or rearranging of funds. Yeah.
We'll get back to you.
That's right. No, it's my point.
You're giving money out while people are leaving.
That's my thought, yeah, exactly.
On special days, you
Yes.
just have to make sure you're there on the right day.
It wasn't sunny enough.
Exactly.
All right, thank you, Madam Treasurer. We'll move on to the finance director's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm just gonna concentrate on what has changed since last month, and I did put the proposed ARPA appropriations in here. That has not been approved at town meeting yet, but it's everything that you all approved, the Board of Finance approved at last month's meeting. So on page 2, we have appropriated $3,063,078 in ARPA funds versus our appropriation, which is $2,964,241. The chair of the ARPA has managed to spend every single penny of our appropriation, plus every single penny almost of all the interest earned. So good job there. It's all done, it's all appropriated. And, you know, right now we're just making sure we're dotting all our i's and crossing all our t's to make sure we're all set by the time December of 2024 comes around. So, I'm not gonna go over all those transfers that you all were here, so you all knew what you did there. Section 2 is the cash flow summary. The general fund for the month of October, it should be October, not September, was down 2.9 million. We had $3.4 million in expenditures and $500,000 in revenues. In the capital section, we're down 527,000. 100,000 of that was for the town hall HVAC system. We made partial payments, so that's all set. 500,000 for the 50,000 for the Acton Public Library generator. And then 464,000 was for paving, and that's going to be part of, we took it out of the off-budget paving account because we knew that there's gonna, well, hopefully it's gonna be approved, that there's gonna be a transfer, so we're gonna move the monies around after that. That was for the 500,000 that we appropriated in ARPA for paving. And we earned $20,000 worth of interest on our reserve funds for the month. And in non-major funds, we're down 110,000. Again, the pension fund payroll is what that was that totaled. In terms of long-term strategies, I'm still on page 3. Well, if you turn to page 4, the combination of what we call our municipal reserve fund, which is capital non-recurring, the fire apparatus fund that we were just talking about, the public works fund, and the board of ed, those 4 total 3.9 million. I'll be talking about that a little bit more when we talk about our capital plan in a little bit, and that also includes the negative balances at this point in time and our desire to self-fund some of our capital purchases. In terms of all of the other projects listed under capital, we did complete, the cameras are all done. We purchased the van and it actually came in less, a little bit less than we expected, a little less than 45,000. And right now we have in progress working on the mini golf windows and clapboard. All the other projects have to wait till the spring, so we're probably not gonna see any more movement on those capital items until the spring. Excuse me. And we have spent, for the capital amounts that are in the individual department budgets, we spent 236,000 of the 693. So budgeted for capital, we had 776,800 going into reserves and named projects. And then we also budgeted 693,000 in individual budgets. That's 1.5 million. Also going to talk about that a little later. So I just want to point that out, the numbers that you all budget every single year for these types of programs. And then down in debt service, just to point out that we budgeted 2,579,000. Also going to talk about that in a little bit. In terms of the last page of this report, there was absolutely nothing that is out of whack. Everything looks good, so I don't have any particular comments. Happy to answer any questions on any of this information. My last point is that the auditors just gave us their closing audit the other day, and everything was perfect. So no issues.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm always happy when that's over.
Yeah. But no management comment, really no comments, which is, usually we don't get demerits, but sometimes we get comments, and they were very pleased this year, so.
It's good. Questions for the finance director?
Question about the library generator, and I
Yes.
probably should have asked this when we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We're replacing the generator?
Nope. There is no generator there.
No.
Nope.
So we're putting one in.
Yes,
Is that same generator gonna be capable when they do the renovations there?
yes.
So it'll stay
The
there?
renovations, you're not adding any space.
Okay.
And the reason we're putting a generator there is it is a place of refuge for the good
Good.
people.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. We'll move on to Leanne, you're gonna maintain the floor for quite a while.
Yes.
Let's go to the budget calendar.
Okay, so I included in this package a proposed calendar for the budget workshops. I think the most important dates that affect the Board of Finance is the capital budget meeting, and Mr. Chair, we're gonna need 2 people from the Board of Finance to represent that committee, either this meeting or next. That's gonna be held on Thursday, January 16th. We have 2 special Board of Finance meetings requested, one on Saturday, as we typically have, and then Tuesday, January 28th. And then we have the dates for the public hearing, and of course, the annual town meeting and the budget referendum. Those dates are set in stone by town ordinance. So on the back page of this, we have proposed departments that will present on certain dates, but we might move those around depending on how the schedules work out. But it's very similar to what we have done in the past years. So the information that I am looking for is whether this calendar is acceptable and the dates work, and the departments that are going to present are what we would like to see so far.
Before I get started, does anybody else have any comments or questions that they want to pose to me?
Was this last year, or maybe this was before that? Wasn't there at a time we used to do a joint, I see the first meeting in early January, joint PD, selectmen and finance. Wasn't there a time where we did a joint meeting with the police commission, the selectmen and board of finance? And everyone did it at once?
I thought we did. Yeah.
Join the PD, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Finance.
But is that the police department or the
Police
police commission?
Oh, it
We
is
did
the
it.
Police Commission.
Oh, okay,
I'm sorry.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yes, you are correct.
and we'll come back to that in a second. Any other questions people have? So let me raise a couple of issues. One is, I circulated to the Board of Finance the request that came from the Board of Education about a meeting earlier this month that they were, I guess, have done annually, but said right up front they didn't have any numbers for us, and it was just a matter of our getting together. So I respectfully declined after consulting with the Board of Finance and suggested that there would be, it would be better for us to meet when they had a better sense of their numbers. They've come back now with a proposal of meeting on the 21st of January. So this would be prior to their actual submission of the budget. It would be kind of a workshop similar to what we were talking about before. If people are comfortable with that, we can schedule that in. Is there anybody who's not?
We just move the other presentations off, right? Because the Board of Ed is usually longer,
Right.
longer presentation.
Right, we would need to, and it may well be, we would have room there because it's DPW and what's TS,
Transfer station.
transfer station. So if DPW is the only one scheduled there,
Yeah,
just
okay.
keep, yeah. So, okay, so, I will get back, to them after this meeting and say the 21st is good. Looking forward to seeing you at 6:30. In reference to the point that Eric just made, I think that I've not been comfortable. And last year we made a small change, and I would recommend that we stay with that. I have no problem with our having a joint meeting with the Police Commission, the Board of Selectmen, so that the chief makes his presentation only one time and doesn't have to go from body to body. But I don't want that to be the only consideration of the police department's budget by this group. So if we can do that in early January as needed, but then make sure that the chief and others know that we want them as one of the departments coming through later in January or February, that would be helpful.
That's, I agree.
Yeah. Okay?
We'll see that.
So shouldn't that be sometime after the police commission approves it?
Yes, right, and the police commission has to approve it by the 15th of
Yeah,
January.
they have to do that early anyway, January 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll work out.
So,
And then the only other thing is, we've gone back and forth a couple of times, with the idea of bringing, CLA in, that's the group, the management consulting group that came in to work, within town hall. They are available to meet, with us on December 17th, if we would like a report from them. Right now, we have information technology and economic development. If we follow this schedule, would, if they were in, could we still do those two entities as well?
yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we
Thank you.
don't do that. All right. So why don't we go ahead and we'll plan on bringing them in on the 17th,
Okay,
and we'll bring those two departments in as well. Okay?
Yeah.
Anything else for anybody? Great, thank you very much. Do we need a approval or just?
well, I just want to make, just if I may, then the public hearing, because on the 4th is okay, so we have to put out notices in place for that, so I just, that's fine.
On the,
Public
March
hearing on the
4th,
4th
yeah.
of March?
on the 4th of what?
March.
Oh, okay.
Public hearing.
So what about, is there a meeting on January 7th? Or is this just, that's not
There
part of
is
the
a
budget
bit, but
calc?
that's not part of the budget, but we could put something in
No,
there.
well, yeah,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
but, this is, and again, this, what we typically do is for each meeting, we will put and other bid
Right.
budget items so that we can, be flexible, if we have to change things about that.
I don't, as long, I don't know that you need a motion, I think that's where you're going.
Right.
As long as the meetings are called and posted, the special meetings, which there are 2, which is better than past years, I think there have been 3 in past years. So I don't know that you need that because, the referendum is called by the Board of Selectmen and public hearings posted and
So I don't know that you need a motion.
Okay, great. So, George?
So I just want to clarify that on the police department presentation. So you were saying the police commission approved their budget, the police on July 15th.
So every department must have their budgets completed and voted on and submitted to the first selectman by January 15th.
Okay, so then, assuming that.
Except for the Board of Ed.
Sure. So it's assuming that the police department then would be sometime after July 15th. So June, like January 15th. And so, I mean, those, we're gonna fill in on those 3 dates because I'd rather have them not be on the same night as the Board of Ed. I mean, last year that was just a too long one night.
That's-
And we shortchanged the Board of Ed because of that. So,
We still have February 4th with nothing, so.
well, the Board of Ed is,
That's because that's another thing, so.
I'm sorry?
Tuesday, February 4th, the Board of Ed's gonna come on the 21st, so they won't need to come on February 4th.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think that we may want, depends on how that conversation goes as to whether we need another one or not. So,
Yeah, no, I thought that Board of Ed coming on 21st is just,
more of a
the preview.
preliminary.
Yeah, no, they won't have the budget preview by then.
Because,
Very
right,
close.
they don't approve their budget till
March 1st.
March 1st.
Well, no, they have to submit it to, again, to the Board of Finance by March 1st. I'm sure they have their budget.
They'll be done by February.
By what?
They'll be done.
February 15th.
Yeah,
The February 4th will probably work, January, not June.
Okay,
Okay,
so we'll work on that.
yeah, I got it.
Sounds good. Anything else?
So just to go back to the police piece, then, if we're gonna meet early January, a joint meeting between all three. Is the thought that the police commission is gonna vote on that budget that night? That only gives them like a week.
The way, yeah, well, the way that it has been done in the past
And the other
is the
two.
police commission has identified 3 dates between what would be the 7th and the 15th, where they will meet, discuss, and vote on the budget and have that. Whether that's good planning or not planning, I'll leave it to others to decide. But that's the way in which it's been done. Then what happens is, after they act, what I'm asking for is then we have a chance to then review the budget, post their action.
Yep, perfect.
Okay? Beautiful. All right, we are on to 5-year capital plan.
All right, so y'all have your folders in front of you. Those are your budget folders now. That's the first, this is the first item to put in there. So we're gonna start. So unfortunately, because of a technical difficulty, I can't do the PowerPoint up there. So we're gonna have to look at some PowerPoints that we have in the package. So if you wouldn't mind getting those out. We like to have one area of deep dive focus per year. Last year, we focused on debt. This year, we're gonna focus on the 5-year capital plan. And to that end, Carl and I have met with all of the department heads and we've asked them, about their goals between 1 and 5 years. We also asked them to explain to us and give to us some of the documents that they use for strategic planning and how they come about thinking about these capital plans and the items that they're going to be requesting from us. As you can imagine, we have many diverse different functions here in town, so we have a lot of varied requests for capital. But over the years, you will see that the Board of Finance has put in an awful lot of strategies that help us to fund a lot of these things. They're already in place, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So this is a draft plan. I'm not done yet, but I figured that it was a great time to talk about it with the Board of Finance. I wanted to talk about the framework of how we're looking at the 5-year capital plan. I do have numbers in there for 2 to 5 years. The 1 year is still under construction because all the department heads are fine tuning their budgets. And so my final presentation of this will include their 1 year information. But also tonight is a nice opportunity for the Board of Finance to give feedback on this, since this is the very first time we're seeing it. If there's anything that you would like to see more or less of, in the 5-year capital plan, you can, let me know. Yes, sir.
For 1 second, and just ask, having only been here for 3 years, is a 5-year plan something that you did 5 years ago, or is this your first 5-year plan, or how regularly does something like this get put together?
This is our first 5-year plan. But we have strategies that are long-term, as you're gonna see, but we have not had an official document like this. And we're, we're required to do a lot of things like this. And so we want to have a 5-year capital plan, like some of our funding for some of our grant programs. They want to see our 5-year plan. They want to see that the item that we are proposing to fund with that capital is listed in that plan. So we have to have it.
Good, no, I think it's great.
Okay, all right. So the agenda. So I'm gonna start with the board. We actually do have a capital planning process policy, so I'm gonna go over where we are with that. And then talk about how we do have town-wide strategic development. And I wanted to make sure I address that for George, because he talks about how the Board of Ed always has their long-term development strategic, and we do at the town too. It's just a lot of things coming together into one hub, and we'll talk about how we get to that point. How we fund these things is the other side of the equation. So there is the need and there is the funding, and really our capital plan is created when the two meet. I mean, we have lots of things we'd like to do, but we don't necessarily have the funds. And then I'll go over the department capital plans for the large departments. Okay, that's our goal. All right, so starting with the Board of Finance capital planning policy. It was approved back in 2018, and we did it because we wanted to make sure that all of the capital plans were properly vetted. There was a concern back there. John O'Brien brought it up to make sure that we had documentation, proper bidding, and all kinds of things. So that's where this policy came from. But once we got the policy in place, it really did help us balance our capital allocations while maintaining a strong financial position, which of course is important to all of us here around this table. So it specifically says that we want to maintain a budget reserve of 17%. So what that means is if some Board of Finance down the road decided that they wanted to spend our entire rainy day fund on some sort of project, that they would have to take this policy into consideration and have a vote to go outside of the boundaries of this policy if they so choose to do that. Also, we have debt service and capital allocations that is targeted to no more than 10%. It can go more because it's a target for 10% of our budget. That includes debt service, which is 2.6 million, as I pointed out. The total capital that we have and we look at every single month is 1.5 million that was budgeted. We also have equipment leases for the fire department, the police vehicles, and DPW. That was 284,000, that lease. And those three items total $4.4 million against a $51.4 million budget. So 8.6% of our budget right now includes our long-term capital allocation towards our budget. The policy states how we identify capital needs through life cycles and our assets through strategic studies and compliance with our town charter. We also have our capital planning committee and the fact that we want to make sure that we're going to properly meet all of the vetting process for our capital goals. So that is in place, and I think it's fairly timeless. That policy is in pretty good shape. But it does not require us to have a 5-year capital plan, so that might be something for dusting that policy off in the future that we would do that. So the town-wide strategic development on slide number 4, that takes place in our land use department. They have a lot of studies that they do. Some are required, a lot are optional, and it provides the base for the town's large infrastructure identification. So the plan of conservative and conservation and development, that is a 10-year plan. And if we don't have one, we become ineligible for discretionary grant funding, which as I'm going to talk about a lot, grant funding is very important to us. This is a planning document and it establishes our foundation, our vision for the town, the ordinance, housing conditions, community opportunities, resiliency, and sustainability. This is our plan of conservation and development, and in here, there's lots of goals and action items. I don't know, did all the Board of Finance get this? You do have it, if you don't, you have it.
Yeah, they got it.
They have, I thought so, but Chris Costa has
I
many
mean,
more
yeah.
upstairs if you want
Yeah.
some of those. Then we come into our 5-year hazard mitigation plan. This is a plan that you all approved funding for. And this is this plan is a risk-based approach to planning decisions, and it also satisfies our requirement for hazard mitigation under FEMA that we have to have in place. And without this plan, we would be ineligible again for discretionary state funding. So the purpose of this plan is obviously to protect people and infrastructure from, damage from storms and things that, disaster responses and recoveries and things like that. When we look at both of these plans, we have found as a town that we have a subset that seems to pop up in every single plan, and that is sustainability and resiliency. So the land use department asked for a study of coastal resiliency to address climate change, sea rise, and all of those things. So we have all of those large plans. And then I have a graphic on page 5. We look at the 10-year plan of conservation and development. We look at the risks of the hazard mitigation plan, and then we really focus in on sustainability and resiliency as a subgroup of all of those plans. Whole host of action items comes out of that, and land use assigns them to the various departments within the town where they ultimately, and it could be many, many years, but ultimately would get implemented. So that's how it works. Any questions there?
What about, things like the parks and rec plan?
That would be included in these plans. It's included,
Okay, so this isn't everything. This is just an example of, because I'm just thinking that they wouldn't fit in any of these three here.
well, if you look at the next slide, the outcomes of those, would be enhanced public safety, which includes maintaining emergency services infrastructure, police, fire, and tree management, promoting sustainability, which is maintaining energy efficient buildings and other community projects, improved transportation, which is maintaining roads, sidewalks, and town parks. So you get that in all overall infrastructure and transportation. Support economic development, which is to improve districts and job creations, and then to maintain all of our town assets, which is to upgrade or replace all of our buildings. So this is huge, like every single project that you can think about is in this plan of conservation and development, the POCD, everything, way of life, parks, bikeways, emergency infrastructure, sea rise, I mean, you name it, it's in there. I mean, bridges, dams, I don't know, Carl, if you wanna, I read it and it's mind boggling.
It is, I mean, Bruce, it's the foundation, the state has one. And every town must have one.
So some of these things are gonna take 20, 30 years before they make their way up to the list, but they are all there. All those projects are there. So we have all of these projects. Some can be done in 1 year, some can be done in 10 years, some can be done in 30 years. They're all listed. And so, it was Carl and Chris Costa and I sat down and I said, well, how do you decide which one to work on first? So, because there is so many of the things, and I think that kind of gets to the heart of one of your questions that you have. So the long-term approach is to utilize engineering to create shovel-ready projects. And it's really a combination of knowing the type of grant funding, because most of these large projects are going to be done with grant funding. And Carl, you can help me at any point here if I misspeak, but most of these large projects are gonna involve grant funding. We're not gonna pay for, new bridges or, new highways or anything really expensive like that. So we know what we need. We know what the grant opportunities are that are out there. And so we would, knowing that they're coming up, we would use engineering to get a shovel-ready project, and then when the funding comes about, we would apply for it. So, I'll stop there.
Well, sometimes long-term can be non-grant funded, it can be like town roads, right? So towns handle their roads differently. We allocate a certain amount of funding every year. We get some state funding, but there are towns that do $10 million every 5 years and they do 20 miles of roads. And when that rolls off, they'll do another 10 million and they'll do whatever. We have about 80 miles of roads in the town, but it's not all necessarily grant funded, but partially town and partially grant, partially other sources, whatever they might be.
Welcome to Beaver Dam Culvert.
Well, that's right, we're partially grant, partially town. And by the way, those bids are being opened tomorrow.
Oh, good. So the 1 year and under short term, you all are familiar with that. You see those in our capital plan for the 1 year in the budget, so I know you know what that is. But let's take a look at our funding strategies. I'm on slide number 9 now. So here's a lot of our long-term things that we have in place to fund these projects. So number 1 is our budget. And again, we have an awful lot of money every single year. We have $1.5 million ongoing into our department budgets. We move a lot of that money, $775,000 about, into reserves and off-budget funds, capital non-recurring, the fire department apparatus, DPW, et cetera, Board of Ed, so that we can fund things as they are needed down the road. And each of these departments has these long-term plans for when they think they're gonna need their trucks or their fire trucks or whatever it is. So we have that in place. We also charge fees. And, this is, harbor management has always charged fees for moorings, and they use that money from the fees to pay for the harbor infrastructure. And recently, a kind of new strategy is for the mini golf a few years ago, $2 per ticket to go into the strategic fund. That went hand in hand with when we did that strategic plan for all the parks to start to fund it. And by the way, in terms of the budget, those plans go back to Carl's time, like however long you've been here for. To fund all of those reserves and keep that going. So that has been a long-term strategic plan that has been in place. And we continue to come up with plans like just this year, this new funding mechanism of transferring $100,000 of budgeted income to the strategic plan for Park and Rec at the end of the fiscal year. We have that written into our budget this year. We may come up with we have some ideas perhaps for some other funding mechanisms. Grant awards is a large part. As I said, we have about $6 million worth of grants, and maybe I didn't say that part. So I meant to mention that in the long term, we have this off-budget fund for grant-related projects. We started with $100,000 in surplus funds in fiscal year 22. We put about $400,000 altogether appropriated to that fund. And we've spent about $232,000 on engineering for potential projects. And on page, I think it's on page 6 of the draft capital plan, you can see we have about $6.5 million worth of grants. So that $200,000 generated $6 million worth of grants.
And just, since you mentioned a specific number on the grant-related funds that we put aside, some of those are gonna be returned to us because on Beaver Dam Trail, the 50% reimbursement is not just for hard costs, it's for all costs. So the engineering on Beaver Dam Trail, probably $100,000 anyway, maybe more. and we'll get 50,000 back from the state on that. That's very unusual with state grants, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, that's okay. We also have specified grants that come in, the NIPS fund, the cannabis funds, the opioid funds, that tell us exactly how we have to spend it. Doesn't necessarily relate to capital, but sometimes it can, like the cannabis funds. We can do things in Mariners Way, for example. We, several years ago, set up the tax increment financing district. And that's where we use a portion of our taxes to go towards that district. I think we put about 40 grand a year, comes off of the top of our taxes and goes towards Mariner Way. That project, that funding went in several years ago. Advertising and sponsorships, this is a new idea. The town policy is needed, and I know that when Jennifer Donahue comes in, talks about economic development, she's going to talk about the idea of this, which is basically putting advertising on like those garbage cans and things like that to generate some fees. And then, of course, we have debt issuance and other long-term borrowings, you know, for things like WPCA and really long-term projects that we put in place. So we have an awful lot of funding strategies. And then, yes, sir.
Sorry, there were questions along the way, and you want to?
You can ask, sir.
So related to the funding, so right now for the general fund, you said basically every year you funded about $700,000 into reserve assets. You funded about $725,000.
Yes.
Do those numbers, can they increase if needed? I mean, how do you guys come up with that number? I guess.
Well, capital planning policy says that we target about no more than 10%. About, you know, we don't want to purposely go over 10%. So we're at 8.55%. So the policy says we want a large, significant portion of our budget to go towards those types of projects. But yes, the answer is you can put in whatever you want, but we don't want to have 30%, 40%.
Yeah, but you capped at 10%.
Well, it's not capped, it's targeted.
I see.
So, that means that you can go a little under, a little over. Okay.
I'm sorry. So the Mariners Way, the money that's coming from Pine Federal?
Yeah.
Is that number 5 or is it number 6?
5.
It's 5?
5, yes.
So where's the money for number 6 coming from?
So did you want to answer that, Carl?
6 is a legislative action that the town took about 5 years ago. It's called tax increment finance,
Yeah, that's right.
tax increment financing district. It's called a TIF district. And basically, from the Mystic Market to Gladeview, that Mariners Way section, it deals with your grand list, and when your grand list goes incrementally up, a portion of the tax monies that are cast off from the increase in the value get put aside into a separate fund for the development of that area. 50% still comes back to the general fund, but I think we're putting 50%, something like that, into a TIF fund for that area. So for that area of town, we have 2 different fund mechanisms. We have the cannabis funds, which can be used for infrastructure for the area in which the cannabis shop is located. And we have the TIF fund. So, all in, we are receiving streams of income for Mariners Way. That was something we did to it was just one tool in the toolbox that we passed to try to incent some investment into that area. It didn't at the time. That area is seeing a little bit more investment right now. In fact, with the fixing up of some of the properties at Custom Marine, it may throw off a little bit more this year. And what you can do is use the TIF funds to put capital back into the area if you want to build sidewalks. There's also a couple other things you can do with that money. You can actually have a particular property, and you can say to that property owner, if you go to the bank and get a loan, we will help you pay part of your loan. I'm forgetting the term for that, but, there's a lot of things you can do. We have a master plan for the TIF district. I bet several members of this board have never seen that, but it does exist. It had to exist when we passed the TIF district. So that's what the TIF is.
No, I understand, yeah, no, actually, I did see it, I mean, 2018, I think was the date on that plan, 2018.
Yeah, that sounds right, yeah.
So, but it doesn't sound like much has happened.
No, but we've been putting money aside,
Perfect, okay.
so that's okay.
Yeah.
Long-term strategy.
I know, I understand, yeah, but getting people to come in to actually do something.
Eric?
It's not a question, but maybe a comment to Carl. The Parks and Rec strategic plan and the funding of this strategic plan. Is the only way we're funding this chipping away at $2 every time
No,
someone plays mini golf?
we're now taking mini golf, or that throws off about 300,000 a year. What we decided to do was take 100 of that revenue that was used to reduce the mill rate. And now we're using 200,000 of that money, I mean, approximately, and we're putting 100,000 a year towards that.
Could we, when Ray comes in from Parks and Rec to do his budget, can you ask him to include an update on not only the where we are funding wise of their implementing their strategic plan? I mean, if I recall, we sat in this room 6 years ago and with the Parks and Rec Commission to approve, or the Board of Finance actually, to approve their strategic plan.
Right. And there were 4 areas in that strategic plan. One of them is the Dock and Dine property, which has never come to fruition as a town-owned asset. But one of them, and the first one that they're targeting, is Clark Park.
Yeah.
And that is going to be fully designed. I know we've talked about this. Jeff Jacobson is working on it. It's, I don't know where he is in that, and that's a good question for Ray. But by the time that is fully designed and ready to go, that project will probably have half of the money needed to pay for it, which is relatively significant. We also have a very healthy capital non-recurring fund. That just because it's healthy doesn't mean we can't use it, if we wanted to use it. So I'm relatively confident that when we want to transform one of the strategic pillars of the Park and Rec strategic plan, we'll be able to do that. One of the others was Harvey's Beach. And that will require all kinds of deep permitting. And I'm forgetting what.
Well, Ray's talked about the physical structures at Harvey's Beach. And if he renovated with the bathrooms, I think at one of them, he couldn't renovate it more than 50% because
That's
of
correct.
regulations. So I'm sure the entire building is in that situation.
You can't do much to that
Right.
building.
Right.
You can do some painting and some repairs and things like that.
So is that a percentage of the building?
Percentage of the building's value,
Yeah, so it's 50%, isn't it?
and that building's value is low.
Yeah, but can't next year they do 50% again? It's 56.
No, it's 50% of whatever the value is right now. It's not
For how long a period
10
of time?
years. 10-year look back.
Is that a town thing or is that
That is a
state thing?
town thing that we are contemplating changing.
Is
It's all over the map on the shoreline. Sometimes they're 2 years, sometimes they're 5 years. So we are 10 years, and I've talked to Chris about this, and we are considering a change.
and that's also for rehabbing a house.
In a 100-year.
It's in the flood zone. It's
Yeah, but there
50%.
are other things you can do with a house. So it's not automatic with a house, but a lot of the houses on the beach areas, yes. Unless you want to raise it,
Right,
you can
yeah,
remodel it to 50% of the value.
I know
And
towns,
that's limiting. It's extremely limiting.
there's some towns that do 50% and then next year you can come back and do it again,
Some towns are doing that.
Yeah.
That's correct, Brad.
which I think is an advantage. I mean, to me, it's a detriment, this 10-year thing.
10 years is a long time.
It's nuts.
You're right about that.
Okay, George?
Clarification, so we cannot renovate that rest area in Harvest Beach more than 50% of its value?
You can, but you have to raise it 13 feet.
Knock it down and start from scratch.
Oh, because it's.
So if they change the law though, to maybe 2 years, in 2 years, we could do more.
Another 50%.
Right,
That building's worth like 40 grand or something, so you could do 20 grand of repairs. If there was a 2-year look back, you could wait 2 years, and it might be worth 70,000, and you can do $35,000 worth of repairs.
Yeah, Ray talked about this specifically related to bathrooms at one of the beaches and said he's doing like what he can do within that threshold to renovate when he was here asking
So-
for funding.
so that's a town thing, this 10-year
The
thing?
look back is a town thing. It is. The 10-year look back is town specific.
Where are we gonna get that changed?
Don't ask me. I'll inquire as to what we're thinking of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
But
This is gonna be a long
the reason why we can't do more because, if it gets flooded, insurance won't pay.
It's not that,
Well, the 50% is a FEMA thing.
yeah.
It's
So-
it's insurance. It's
And
insurance.
we're just choosing every 10 years.
Yeah, I see.
FEMA will not cover it. If it's destroyed twice within a certain period of time, they're not gonna cover it anyway. And they'll require you to go up. When Chris Costa comes in here, it might be better, I don't wanna digress too much on this. Might be better to talk to her about that. But we are limited at Harvey's Beach.
Probably in the resiliency plan for 2019, so.
Okay. let's go
All
to
right,
budget.
off-budget funds, so, the point I wanted to make here, you know, I've talked about off-budget funds before. The last time I spoke was to show how everything is authorized to gets to off-budget funds, but really, tonight I want to talk about, most of those funds are strategic in nature. We have, about $16 million in off-budget funds, and as I pointed out before, 4 million of that are those 4 main reserve funds that we have. And so, you know, I put down just a little bit of a cross-section, because I didn't want to list them all, because there's 100 of them. But we have reserves, we all know the long-term strategic goal for them. We have grants that come in, we put them into the off-budget funds, and then we complete our projects. We also have a lot of initiatives, such as grant engineering, that create capital programs, and some of these things that we haven't really gotten, these initiatives that we haven't gotten going on, perhaps would ultimately in the future generate requests for capital. And then we have mandates that we have to carry out, and that would be, that only mandate I know of is the WPCA sewer septic issue. So our budget funds is a store of capital and capital that we are currently using for our town. On page 11, just, you know, there's, as I mentioned before, that we have a lot of grants out there. Some of them are ongoing. All of our department heads that manage these programs are very much aware of what's going on. And the type of grants that are coming helps us to inform what type of shovel-ready projects we want to get going. So these are just some examples, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. So now I'm going to go yes.
On the grants,
Yeah.
part of the monies that we had set aside as Saybrook was for help in grant writing. Does that get stretched in help in grant finding, or?
Yes.
Because I think
It could.
that may also increase our opportunity there.
Exactly, so that is the point of that, my comment there is that we have initiatives that some are, like, you know, Mariners Way or the Housing Authority, they might generate capital, and others might be ways to find capital, such as engineering or grant writing, or grant finding. So now I'm going to turn to the individual departments and just go over them as quickly or as slowly as you'd like me to. On page 3 of the capital plan, the written capital plan, we went through every single department and we took a look at what the department was, what is their driver of capital needs, how do we assess their capital needs, and what are the likely funding options. So As I go through these departments, I'm really gonna be talking about those types of things. But that kind of helps us to think strategically what our department heads are thinking about, as they came up with these plans, and they helped me to create that matrix. So I think it says a lot about where the capital is coming from in the next 2 to 5 years. So major projects, I'll talk about the major projects for the next 2 to 5 years, in terms of each department. Department of Public Works, which includes the transfer station, their assessment involves the condition of the roads, their infrastructures, bridges, et cetera. They use that as part of their assessment, and their fleet management. Those are the two major drivers, their equipment and their infrastructure. And obviously, you know, as Carl was mentioning, we already have a plan in place. We put $500,000 a year towards paving, road maintenance, and then we also transfer, well, you know, you haven't seen this yet, but that's a proposal for $125,000. It's currently at $100,000 that we put toward the equipment reserve for DPW, but we did talk about the fact that we were gonna raise it. So I have 125 in the budget right now, in case you're wondering why that number is different from the one you see typically. 1 year, Bill is working on it. 2 to 5 years was identified, anything that might come up in terms of fleet management, some trucks, things like that. And then a redesign of the transfer station is in the 2 to 5 year horizon.
Yeah, it's just a point in terms of whether this could be a discussion for the town. I'll be very curious to understand more about the 5 year plan for the transfer station, how it's gonna work with, you know, with Mira going under or whatever, what's gonna happen to that, and maybe going. You mentioned some of the stuff in terms of some of the other options for how to basically haul trash at Old Saybrook, right? In terms of, we need to get to it tonight, right?
Yeah, I think we're always gonna have a transfer station.
Sure.
So in the redesign just essentially is trying to make sure the town is not a dumping ground for mostly commercial and out of towners. And so we talked about redesigning it, and we do have a redesign. And that has to go through inland wetlands because of where our transfer station sits. It's also on an aquifer. So there's a couple issues there.
And a point that I'd like to make about that is we could certainly ask the department heads when they come in, because they know about these projects, but they're not gonna know how we're gonna do it at this point in time. They just know that we're going to do it, and they still have to figure out all the ins, the outs, the engineering, the design, the cost, et cetera, and that's gonna be a moving target. So, you know, perhaps some of these things, once you see them, maybe the value of this capital plan is once you see these things on the capital plan, if you wanna hone in on something or another, then we can maybe have a special presentation. Okay, parks. The assessment that they use there is the strategic plan that they had developed. Typically in the budget, they have their named projects every single year. Those parks are capital intensive. And every year you're going to see something that they request specific in a named project. We don't have the 1 year project yet. In the 2 to 5 years, the town park, that's Clark Park redesign and renovation. He did bring over a strategic plan that I saw, part of that for strategic design. It's also looking for a playground installation, Harvey's Beach paving, and a dog park are things that he mentioned for the next 2 to 5 years.
I've been searching all over town for a dog park.
I know.
Ferry Road,
What?
Ferry Road,
Where?
where the soccer field is. Get rid of that field because they keep talking about wanting to raise it, and then, anyway, we can talk about it.
Town-owned buildings, we own 9 of them. And so we have to be concerned about their assessment. We look at their roofs, mechanics, interior, exterior. We have maintenance in all of these budgets for those things. And, you know, we can tell when things are about to go. We also have capital assets. It tells us how old everything is. And so we know what we're looking for and about what time we should start looking at those things. 1 year is to be determined, and 2 to 5 years, we're looking at a Department of Public Works garage renovation. Fire department, The assessment there is basically the equipment useful life. You just heard a request for equipment tonight for $95,000. They have $60,000 in their budget every year that they can buy on smaller pieces of equipment. I forgot to write this down, but they also have the $176,000 in the fire department apparatus transfer that we do every single year. So that's a funding mechanism that we have in place for them. And in the 2 to 5 year horizon, they have a fire truck refurbish. Those trucks are very expensive. A refurbishment is $850,000.
It's endless.
Wow.
I mean, we spent a lot of money on the fire department and they have great equipment and, and then Joe mentioned this to me. There may be, he has some funding ideas, so we can go into that at another time.
We spend a lot of money on a fire department.
What?
Be in a town where you have a.
Right, a paid fire department and
You
that.
save a hell of a lot of money
No,
that these guys volunteer.
Understood, and all we do is pay for buildings and equipment, you're 100% right, and.
We were constantly.
No, it's-
Running into things where we had to pay more money.
And we wanna keep a volunteer fire department, you're right.
We want to keep a healthy volunteer fire department.
Right.
Because there are plenty of towns around that Saybrook is going to because they don't have enough volunteers, so.
That's correct.
Police department, I did not meet, Carl and I did not meet with the chief. He was not available, but I do know that the budget, there is funding for the fleet management, is about 90 grand a year. And in the 2 to 5 years, we know of refresh, upgrade for the communication tower.
The chief has talked to me about that over the last couple of weeks.
I got a question, what is that, car police, or whatever it is, when does that do again?
So
It's paid off.
we already made our fourth payment and it was a 4-year financing plan, so cars are no longer, cars are free and clear.
I think the question is when do we flip the fleet?
Right.
again?
Those cars were delivered a year late, so they should definitely have another year on them at least. So Leanne and I have talked about how we could maintain a funding mechanism even if we're not flipping the fleet. So there's 90,000 in the police budget towards the payment of a payment for vehicles. I would suggest probably keeping that money in there, considering that if you don't buy a whole fleet, if you don't finance a whole fleet of cars, you're gonna buy 2 or maybe 3 cars a year. And that's what we were doing before we did the financing part of it. So if interest rates are too high,
So can we, get a mileage update on all our vehicles?
I'm sure, yeah, that's not a problem.
All right.
So you'll either be buying vehicles, maybe 2 or 3 a year, or you're gonna finance them again when the time comes, and whether that is in the spring or a year from now, I'm not sure.
It depends on the hours on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Carl, do you remember the aggravation that was involved in buying 2 or 3 cars a year?
Well, as long as the aggravation was, I do remember, John, you and I both, and Brad, yeah, the aggravation was more that it was a moving target. One year we had 30,000 in there, the next year we put 60. It wasn't a steady number. So I think if we supply a steady number, 90,000, it's already in the budget, keep it static, and we use some of the off-budget money that the department is generating when we have a police car parked and we're getting whatever the number is,
Outside
$16,
services,
$20 for the vehicle, and put that money in that fund, you'll have enough money in there to buy cars as you need them or finance cars if you need 5. That's what
I'm just checking.
no, but I remember that, John. There are some years, we need to go to 0, and then you had 0 in there for cars. And then the next year you'd need 2 cars, and that's, back then it was 6.
We were paying for it in maintenance.
Yeah.
Maintenance bills were crazy.
So, and the question is, what do we need for vehicles? That's the other question. And I think we'll hear from the chief and the police commission on that. Anyway.
Okay. So, information technology, Again, our assessment there is we need to refresh our technology, and we also have to be aware of technology evolution and now cyber issues, cyber risks. Our strategy is to place all of our software in the cloud so that we don't have any servers here, and that we can rely on vendors with really secure software providing us with very secure software. So we have an annual maintenance in the budget for cloud service. For the 1 year is TBD, and then 2 to 5 years. We do have a couple of servers here for email and something else, I forget, our firewall. And so those need to be replaced every so often, so that's in the 2 to 5
With
years.
IT though, there are grant opportunities, and we have a grant out there for about, I want to say 180,000 or so. If we get that grant, that is going to probably push this 2 to 5 year plan to a 4 to 8 year plan. But we haven't heard yet. But there, I think IT is a rich area for grant writing. So I would encourage IT and whoever is looking for grants to look for IT grants, because I think that's an area where we could secure more money.
Economic development, the assessment is involved in assessing the business and improving the business district. We have an annual marketing plan in the budget, and we have started a reserve for Celebrate Old Saybrook. In the 2 to 5 years, they're looking for wayfinding signage, business directory in downtown, and an economic initiative, which is just something, it's not specific, but they'll come up with something, obviously, over the 2 to 5 year horizon.
Just quickly, on the marketing side of it, I happen to love this Say Old Saybrook. At first, I wasn't sure about it. I don't know who's on social media and who isn't, but I keep seeing it. I don't know what you guys think.
I like it.
I think it's a good little tagline.
Know what it is when it pops up.
WTCA Phase 3, the assessment is the deep mandate. 2 to 5 years, the Phase 3 zero program, which hopefully will work on sometime in the near future. That would likely involve debt.
Debt
issuance.
It
We've
will.
talked about that in the debt program. Harbor management is the assessment is what infrastructure do we need in the harbor? At the moment, there's none. But 2 to 5 years, any infrastructure that they may need, and the dredging of North Cove.
Theoretically, North Fork dredging should not come out. There should be town funding for that because should be a federal project. And that was done last time. The state funded, I think, 50% of that. And the only reason it was funded at that time, or required state funding, was the Army Corps' budget. Their O&M budget, their operations and maintenance budget had been slashed, so they didn't have the funding to do it. So the state kicked in money on that, but theoretically, that should not happen.
Yeah, we should not pay for it. That was a $7 million dredge.
Right,
Wow.
correct.
Grant funding.
Wow. 7 million, and it needs it again. I mean,
Or it shouldn't even be grant, it shouldn't even be, the town shouldn't even have to get grant funding for it. It should be a federal project. North Cove is a federal harbor and refuge, so they have jurisdiction over that, so.
Thank you for that.
And the residents of North Cove start hearing the banging of
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So
George would be happy to have him over there instead of next to his house.
I live by the bridge in construction.
It'll be a long 7 years.
It should be done soon, no, right?
Not soon enough. How that should shape.
And this is great.
A great height.
Oh, that bridge,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, that would.
I thought you meant by the
Well, you know,
Amtrak
it's
bridge.
funny, I drove down there today to see, they're supposed to be out of there in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Like
What?
I don't
Thanksgiving.
think so.
Okay, you know what, I'll make it,
I haven't even gone to look at it. What does it look like?
I'm gonna email the state on that, and I'll try to get you.
Not-
Apparently not much.
Apparently doesn't look that great, Carl says. Doesn't look that good?
Let's keep going.
All
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So, slide number 22 is oversight. So we will have an annual review and approval of this 5-year capital plan. It's not going to be done every 5 years. It'll be updated every year for the next, in the 5-year horizon. Once a project is, implemented, we have tracking and reporting. We have that now. We continue to have that. And then we have audit compliance for all the projects that we have in the town, whether they're grant related or just things that we're buying through the capital assets reporting requirements that we have through our audit. So there is oversight for all of these funds that we are investing. Excuse me. And on the last page, I will just conclude, we have our long-term plan that is developed in land use. And those projects are assigned to all of the departments. The departments use various methods of assessment to determine what they need over the 2 to 5 years of that grand list of projects that land use develops. We identify projects for both the short term and the long term, and then we match funding sources to them. And then we comply with various project management requirements, auditing, et cetera. And so hopefully, this tool, this 5-year capital plan is going to be codifying our 5-year forward-thinking approach to all of these strategies that we have put in place, and we'll continue to add more, such as how to fund police vehicles, et cetera, as we move forward. So that's it.
What questions do we have? George?
First of all, thank you. This is an amazing presentation, this is an amazing document. And I appreciate that it's a working document. And so, trying to put some concrete numbers into some of these things. And so on page 6 of your report, you actually have, some numbers for the 2 to 5 year plan. You Parks and Rec, town parks get $6 million out of that list so far, which is, that's a big number. And I don't know if I didn't see how that fitted in there, but that's a big number. But if you take those away, the rest, well, the library renovation, I think that's part of what's going on right now with the $5 million. I'll put that separate. So if you take those numbers apart, the rest of it adds up to about $2 million, right? So, which seems very low for a 5-year plan, but, so I'd be curious to see how this develops. There's a few TBDs in there, but they don't seem very expensive, potentially very expensive things.
Well, I think too that this is the first year that the department heads have thought about it, and then maybe as they get into the groove or think, oh my gosh, I have to put it in this plan in order to get considerations considered for funding, that I think that it will gel as we move forward. Sometimes the first year could be a little.
I mean, some of these things are just almost could just be done normally on a normal budget, right? It doesn't really need a 5-year plan to have some kind of potential, right? Just
Maybe a few years, yes.
Just small, yeah. I mean, the other question I had was, so I mean, we take advantage of all the grants, and I appreciate that. So I think you mentioned that we own a lot of buildings, with the town owns a lot of buildings. And
you know the buildings we own.
yeah, and I probably heard you guys say that roof maintenance, replacement is always a constant thing. And so, with the new administration coming out, I don't know whether the Inflation Reduction Act will still be in place, but one of the things you looked into this, right, that the Inflation Reduction Act currently anyway reimburses towns, municipalities for putting in renewable energy, right? And so a new roof with solar panels, right, will be 30% off, right? Something to consider, right? And if especially with the administration, if the Inflation Reduction Act goes away, then it doesn't matter anymore, but if it continues, it's a 30% reduction on purchasing solar panels, right? Something to think about. So it doesn't make sense on old roofs, but you can put new roofs in.
Right.
Think about it. Yeah. The advantage, of course, is that will lower your utility use as well.
Other questions people have? One of the things, and I'm not sure what the process would be. I have to do a little bit of a crosswalk between the dollars that are in the written document versus what's in the higher level that's in the PowerPoint. But I'll give you a for instance, and you help me as to what right. We've been very, I think prudent with the way in which we budgeted in the last few years and, particularly on the revenue side, which has resulted in a certain amount of surpluses. And it seems to me, and I'm not just a casual observer of this, it seems to me when we get to the point of it's time to spend the surplus, time to allocate the surplus, it's, there's not like a clear set of priorities that, okay, what are the next 5 things that are in line, ready to go, that we need to do? Now, some of that is they're not shovel ready, we haven't got the engineering done, so we don't really know what the numbers are. But in my mind, a 5-year plan that would be really useful for this committee would be taking this great start that's happened and then begin to set some priorities and some numbers associated with that, so that it won't be rote, but at least it will be recognizable that, this is more important than that. And so therefore, if we have money, we ought to put money toward that. I mean, those Parks and Rec strategic plan, where does that stand against, and so I'm not sure within the milieu of the town where that process takes place. Maybe it's here at the Board of Finance, but at some point, it would be good to begin to hone in a little bit more on what I would call the strategic part of setting priorities and attaching some dollars to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think prioritization is important. And I can think of 2 or 3 right off the get-go that I think should be prioritized.
Right, so it just would be helpful for all of us to be thinking on the same page.
And I agree with that too. And again, being the first year that we did this and not having the benefit of all of the department heads in the room at the same time, it's, they have to think about it a little bit more clearly too. So they couldn't, in some instances, give timeframes. In other instances, they don't know when it's going to be ready for a variety of reasons. These things aren't, a lot of these projects just aren't ready, but we know they're going to be needed.
Right, and my comment in no way diminishes the work that's gone on. I think it's
Yeah, no,
great.
I
I'm just
know.
saying now it's a springboard. That's the problem with doing good work. You always want more.
It's okay.
I was in a meeting yesterday and the person at the end of the meeting said to me, "This was a bad meeting." And I looked at him and said, "The difference between a good meeting and a bad meeting is a good meeting," or he said, "a bad meeting is when, there's so much more work yet to be done." Right? And that's what he said. Anyway.
Good. Okay, are we all, so with that,
I just want to piggyback on what you were just saying, right? I mean, and I think, unless my math is wrong, right? If you take away the library renovation and the $6 million set aside for town park, which, I'd like to hear more about, the rest of it adds up to about $2 million, right? Yeah, somewhere in the ballpark.
There's a couple of things that aren't in there.
Right, but last year's surplus, or this year's surplus, would have paid the entire lift for 5 years, right? And so in some ways, I'm just saying it's a nice, it seems like a very modest ask for a 5-year plan, right? It's just,
Yeah, but you have to include the $3 million piece. You can't just subtract that out.
Sure.
And also some of these other things like the DPW garage
That's
renovation is gonna be very expensive.
That could be a
So I
$2
think,
million project.
Sure.
watch out for your TBDs.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, that's what I was doing, yeah.
And
Those are hard to add together.
Yeah.
And the communications tower, I don't know what that number is.
He's in WPCA phase 3. I mean,
That's a
when
different
we,
story, yeah, that's.
So,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that we can get the number a lot higher for the children. But, so this year we will, do, step 1, and then as we can we'll work a little bit more on the prioritization. And now I think when the department heads come in, you have a lot of things that you can ask them
Yeah.
about, so.
No, it's very helpful in that regard.
So, I mean, it's very nice of you to offer that, but should we let the department head know that we gave permission to ask them this? Because I don't want to blindside them.
they know that the 5-year capital plan is there, and I will coach them that,
Okay,
you know,
fair enough.
you can talk. But if you have questions for the department
Yeah,
heads,
okay.
you know, just let me know, and I can.
That'd be great,
give it to
because
them
I
before
but I
the
don't wanna
meeting, so they
all of a sudden just
can prepare.
blindside.
Well, they may know the project, they just may not have
Sure,
the
sure.
magnitude of cost.
Sure,
Right,
sure.
they're not gonna
Yeah,
know
no,
some
but,
of these
yeah.
things.
No, it's a nice offer, but I just want to ensure we don't blindside.
And they can always ask, doesn't mean they'll get it.
And of course, it's always the number one priority, because it's just their department.
Sure.
Yeah.
Versus everything else. All right, we'll move on. Selectmen report.
Yeah, I'll move quickly. I already told you Beaver Dam Trail is, it's been out to bid for a month. Tomorrow we'll be opening the bids electronically at 10 a.m. We had a pre-bid meeting. There were probably 7 contractors there, which was good. It was not a mandatory pre-bid either. Just so you're aware, there's 3 months that they cannot work, and I think it's April, May, and June due to frogs or salamanders or something. So they're not able to do that. So they can start, then they're gonna have to stop. So I'll have better numbers for you on that. As you know, the town has put aside $1 million of ARPA dollars towards that. I do have the, just because I know this question's coming, the Police Executive Research Forum report is, I do have it. It's in draft. It was delivered about a week ago. The Board of Selectmen is in possession of drafts, and the Chief of Police is in possession of the draft. The draft is to be reviewed for typographical errors and factual errors until November 29, and then any corrections go back to PERF, and they have a 2-week period then to deliver the report. So I'm probably not going to comment much more than that unless there's.
There was, I thought part of the contract was a public presentation.
There is, there will.
So will that be
Yes.
scheduled by Board of Selectmen or by?
Yeah,
Police
well,
Commission?
we'll schedule it. Yep.
So a question for you.
Yeah.
Does the chairman of the police commission have it?
He does not.
Really? Okay.
Yep, and that was, we talked about that. And, we agreed that,
No, sir.
so, I don't know if we came before you a little while ago with this, Safe Streets for All grant that we were going to apply for. It's like $250,000. There was gonna be a 25% match on the town side. The consultant we were using was for free if we got the grant. Assuming we got the grant, he'd be paid from the grant. We didn't get it. We were notified, even though there's like $300 million. It's a federal grant, but we didn't get it, which was fine. We'll apply another time. So Main Street sidewalk work, you see Larry Bonin out there. Bill Claffey solicited like 3 or 4 different contractors to do sidewalk work. And he ended up hiring Larry at the best price. So Larry is going to be fixing a lot of our stenciled concrete sidewalks on Main Street where there were trippers and where it needs to be repaired. So we're doing that. Then we're gonna fix the parking stalls next year, which you've been hearing about for about 2 years now. And the crosswalks are in final design. So I would hope all that work, all of it, is complete by Memorial Day of next year.
Wow.
The sidewalks, the parking stalls, and the crosswalks.
Wow.
So that is the plan.
3 of the 5.
What?
3 of the 5 crosswalks.
3 of the 5, 3 of the 4.
3 of the 5.
There's, we have a tentative agreement, and I won't go into the details of it, with the support staff for their contract that expired this past June 30th. We're in review right now. They'll vote, the Board of Selectmen will vote, and then it'll go public. We had a very successful, for those of you who were there, Sustainable Connecticut Awards last Wednesday night. Jerry was there. It was great. It was a great night. There were people from all over the state there, from Darien and Ridgefield and Ellington. And I mean, people came from everywhere, to Old Saybrook, and some of them probably went out to dinner. I know I had a couple ask me where to go for dinner afterwards, and so we sent them on their merry way. We have a new tax assessor, Bridget Reardon, has been appointed. She's certified, she took the test. So we were pretty seamless with regard to losing Norm and bringing on a new assessor. So congratulations to Bridget. She was in the support union. And when there's a vacancy in the supervisors union, a support union member gets first dibs on applying before it goes external. It's not mandated that we give them the job if they're qualified, but they get first consideration. Bridget's been in that office for 5 years and she has taken all the classes. She will continue with her education. And so we're happy to have her. Just want to publicly, I did it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, give a shout out for the early voting to the registrars and the poll workers. Honestly, it was new. I don't have a number for anybody yet. I'm trying to get it as to what it costs. CCM is doing they're asking us a survey as to what it costs each town to do early voting. And of course, the constitutional amendment of no excuse absentee voting also passed. So could they reduce the amount of early voting by a week and have no excuse absentee balloting also? If it turns out to be very expensive, I would say yes, but I don't know that they'll do that. But anyway, congratulations to Old Saybrook on a super successful early voting. I just want to say that publicly. And for grant writing, Bill Claffey wants to apply for some infrastructure. He wants to apply for a baler of cardboard. And he thinks he'll be able to sell that cardboard. His wife works in the school system and she does some grant writing for the schools. So I've authorized her to, there's a $15 million DEP grant out there. And so it has to be submitted by the end of November, $55 an hour. I can't imagine it'd be much more than $500-600 to try to get this. And Bill thinks he'd make that money in the first set of bailing. I don't know that we'll get it. We'll see. One last thing, Ferry Road. So the design, we mentioned it earlier, the design that Jacobson has completed makes that field a perfectly drained field, okay? So I know you seem skeptical of that, but you can build a field. I'm not, but what we're going to do, what we're proposing to do is have Jeff, that field is designed, we saw the bids, they were like 330,000. The STEEP grants, Small Town Economic Assistance Program grants that are coming out probably in the next few months, I'm surprised they weren't announced yet, you can now apply for up to $1 million, as opposed, it used to be 500,000. So the idea, I told Jeff, and with Ray's suggestion, let's make that field the best field. Let's put in bleachers, let's add a scoreboard. Let's do everything we need to do. The number may be more like $500,000 or $600,000, but the field will be a perfectly playable, presentable, parkable, we'll fix the parking lot a little bit, U12 or U14, whatever it is, field that people will want to go to and will pay for it via a STEEP grant. That is currently on the table for consideration with regard to Ferry Road. And wouldn't it be great to have that field? If it is dry, and it will be, because you can build it that way. And I know we talked about this too, Brad. So, and the idea would be to apply for a STEEP grant and not come to the board.
So is he gonna raise it up?
Yep, be raised up a little bit and would have drainage, however they do drainage.
Is it gonna be a turf field or?
No,
No, real,
I mean,
real,
grass.
real grass,
Yeah.
okay.
Does it expand the parking lot?
I don't know if he'll expand it. I'm not sure. I haven't seen.
That's one of the bigger issues. I mean, I'm just letting you know that during a soccer game there, people are parking on the road, you get out of your car, you got cars. I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
great spot in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
For large scale events.
Well, yeah. Anyway, that's hard.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a quick question. So when you were talking about the Safe Street grant, the what, the Safe Street grant? So the one that we didn't get.
Safe Streets for All, yeah.
So, yeah, for these grants we don't get, do they give you back a feedback in terms of?
Oh, feedback,
So that's when you apply again, that there's a.
this consultant has gotten 10 other of these grants all over the state of Connecticut, and he came to us and he's like, we know him. And he's like, I'll put in for this grant, you guys are gonna get it. He was very confident that we were gonna get it, and we didn't. And so he did not give us he didn't give us feedback. The grant is a very simple grant. You identify areas of town where you think mid-block crosswalks, where you think they might be unsafe, how to make them better, and you submit it and try to get money for a better study. It's really to get study money, and then you apply for, money to maybe fix the infrastructure once you have the study done.
I see.
So he didn't give us feedback. We were just notified we didn't get it.
Someone mentioned to me today, the Whole Foods is back on the.
They are, they're not gonna go before zoning before they have a very firm septic plan, and that's what they're working on. And they are working on it, and once they have it, then they will go to zoning. So they are,
Back in the.
they've always been very interested, and they're still interested.
Okay. All right, anything else? We'll move on. Liaison reports, any liaison reports? Jerry, you want to walk us through our calendar of regular meetings?
Okay, so I think everybody has gotten a copy. There's really no holidays that are gonna interfere. And we should vote on this so that I can send it.
You just have election, or just one date you have is election day.
Right, once again, but. we-
Well,
we do
November
that.
4th.
Yeah.
We do that every year.
But we still put the dates in, and if we wanna change or cancel, that's what we do.
Motion to approve the calendar is submitted.
Okay,
Is there a second?
thank you.
There is a second by Brad. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Mhm.
Comments from board members? George?
I'd like to volunteer to be on the capital planning committee.
Oh, boy, stole my comment, which was I was gonna ask. Okay, then we have a volunteer. We'll need one other. I don't know whether anybody else wants to volunteer tonight or. We have two volunteers. So Brad and George. Okay, good.
Can't wait.
Brad? you want to,
Yeah, could you request, an update on all, police vehicles, please?
Sure. So you want mileage on all of your.
And hours.
Hours and miles
Hours and mileage.
on all vehicles.
And maybe just, how are these Tahoes performing? I'm kind of curious. I don't know.
I think they've ironed out a lot of problems with them.
Okay.
Just talking to other towns. They've, beefed up the suspension, etc. When we first got them, they were, right? I think they fixed it.
Any other comments? Let me ask out loud, right now, if we have a meeting scheduled for December 3rd. At that meeting, we would have, updates on the, financials. We could push those updates to December 17th and cancel December 3rd unless there is a reason why either you or Leanne would like a December 3rd meeting.
I don't see anything on the, would be pressing. What?
It's like, cancel a meeting.
Oh,
Okay, is there any objection to doing that?
No.
George?
So, I mean, but if the report is always the beginning of the month, why move to the 17th and count the 3rd versus go the other way around and count the 17th?
Because the 17th, we have CLA coming in, we have IT and economic development coming in.
Sorry.
yeah, CLA couldn't make it on the 3rd. So that's why. We tried to get them in on the 3rd.
When's the, Christmas, Saturday Night Live?
14th, I think.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Torchlight parade,
It's the 14th.
14.
okay. 14th?
Right.
It's later, isn't it?
7th is Starlight, 14th is Torchlight.
Oh, by the way, somewhere I read that the town got recognized for being a holiday spirit.
Yeah.
And that was organic, that
Most
was not
Christmassy, I
placed
think.
advertising,
Right.
that
Right.
was, Jennifer was really
So
happy.
congratulations on
Were
that.
we considered most Christmassy? Was that what they
Yeah.
called it? Something
That
like
was
that.
last year, but then
Last year.
it was on a magazine.
I just saw it somewhere,
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Moving forward. All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
yeah. Some of,
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Not once,
Any
except-
opposed? Thank you all very much.